From the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
Happy Tuesday to you, everyone. I'm Jessica Ralston. We're hosting Open Line tonight on this Tuesday, talking about a very hot topic right now. That, of course, is Ebola. So if you have any questions, we'd love to have you call in tonight, try to get some answers for you, separate some fact from fiction, and go through some of the common mistakes or things that people think about Ebola and how it's spread, and kind of clear up some misconceptions for you. So let's introduce our guest tonight. Is Dr. Bill Paul, who's the director of the Metro Public Health Department overseeing Nashville. You've been here many times before, but welcome again, and thanks for being here.
Great to see you.
All right, let's get started. Hopefully you'll call in with your questions, but before that, let's just start with the basics. Okay,
yes.
Because
there's a lot out there in the news.
Yes.
There's a lot of just hype almost, and
Absolutely.
people are on edge, and people are worried, and people are wondering what they really need to worry about. I think it's probably best to really go through the basics on Ebola. Ebola is a virus. It causes a disease. It's been around. We've known about it for at least 40 years.
Right. Yeah, it's been around for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, 40 years is pretty recent, but there have been a number of outbreaks in Africa over those years, and each one of those outbreaks has been controlled. And where we're at right now with Ebola is that in 3 countries in Africa, the outbreak has not been controlled. And so it's a serious situation as far as that spread in West Africa in those 3 countries. And it started to concern us here because people can leave those countries and bring the virus to the U.S. And we saw that in Dallas. We'll, of course, talk about that.
Certainly.
But there's some things really to remember about the virus. It's not as easy to spread as some other viruses.
Right. Let's really just start off with how it is spread and just give out some basic information.
Yes. Ebola is spread. One thing to remember is only somebody who's sick with the virus can spread the virus. So there's not somebody who looks fine, who doesn't have any symptoms, that can carry the virus from one person to another. That's not really how it's spread. It's spread from somebody who's sick. And how can it be spread? It's spread through direct contact with body fluids. And by body fluids, I can go through the whole list, but you can imagine.
Well, we have them listed on the screen,
yes.
So I guess we can go through them if we need to. But actually, maybe we should, just so people get it here. Blood, vomit, urine, feces, sweat, semen, spit, other fluids. Now, explain that, because is that true? If someone has Ebola, they're very sick, and they spit on you, I don't know, it gets on your hand, you can contract it that way?
Possibly.
Okay.
But you know how this is really spread in the outbreaks that have occurred. It's really direct contact with blood, with stool, with vomit, with body fluids.
Okay.
Now, could there be a little bit of virus in somebody's spit, and if they sneeze right directly in your eyes or something? How often does that ever happen to us?
Hopefully not often.
Hopefully not often. But there are these ways that people start to get worked up about that are very unlikely, and certainly, the Ebola virus is one that we need to take seriously and with respect, but it's not one that spreads really, or has spread through casual contact.
Well, what do you think happened with the nurses in Texas that treated Thomas Duncan? Because I know they had their protective gear on, but then we saw reports that maybe their necks weren't covered. But still, to me, that I could see how it caused concern, because how did they get it if they were still doing everything they were supposed to be doing?
Yes, that's a good question, and I don't have details on it. I wish I could just tell your audience exactly what happened and where that happened, and we haven't really heard that. But when you think about the kind of protection, I mean, one of the things about Ebola is that those fluids can be very infectious. So especially if somebody has a lot of diarrhea, blood, vomit, if they're really sick. If they're really sick, they're not out on a bus sitting next to us.
Right.
You know, they're really sick. But those things can be very infectious. And if in any hospital, paying attention to all the details of putting on your protective gear and taking off your protective gear can get very complicated. And if it's a situation with Ebola and it is gear that you're not quite as used to, and it's a disease that you're not quite as used to, I can imagine. I know I would probably make mistakes. You know, I would, my glasses would fog up, and my hands would go up near my eyes,
right.
Something where I didn't mean to. And usually my gloves don't have anything that's really highly infectious on them. But I don't know exactly what happened in that instance.
Right.
But I think that's one thing that people are really understanding, is that when you're treating a sick patient, you have to be very, very careful.
Yeah, and obviously that happened today. They had the CDC in New York. They're talking, to hundreds of healthcare workers and saying this is the new guidelines, new protocols. This is how you put your gear on. This is how you take it off. But besides from healthcare workers, just the general population, we've seen people who are now afraid to fly. They're afraid to get on a plane.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to know, like, where is Ebola in the world and where is Ebola not in the world. I mean, it is a major concern in 3 countries in West Africa: Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. Those countries really at this point are in a public health emergency, with more cases every day and more people dying. So it's a tragic event there. So in this country, we just heard today that that more of the people that were being followed in Texas. So there were these events with a patient who came from Liberia, and then the 2 nurses.
Right.
A couple of days ago, we heard that the first set of people had been released, that they had passed 21 days, that they had not been infected, and I just heard today another 50 had been released and not been infected. So it's not multiplying in leaps and bounds in Dallas, and there has been such a careful look at every step of each patient, so that contacts of people with very mild symptoms, I mean, people have been really tracked very closely. So it's not a situation where Ebola is in Dallas, and so Dallas is a risk factor. We have that situation in those 3 countries in West Africa, but in this country, there's not ongoing Ebola transmission. And so if I'm going to catch it, it's by direct touching of blood and body fluids of somebody who is sick and who was in one of those 3 countries in Africa within the 3 weeks before they became sick.
It's hyper-specific.
And so it is a pretty specific thing. It's not a widespread thing
which is a great point to make, is this man, came from Africa. He was very, very sick, and you had 2 cases of the healthcare workers who had direct contact with him getting sick. But it didn't spread all over Dallas and then spread all over Texas. So
and that's not how this would be expected. I mean, this is something that we know a fair amount about the virus, and we know enough that spread in healthcare settings needs to be a major concern.
Absolutely.
But in terms of it's on the street corners, it's in the buses, or we know at this moment that there's not a case in Tennessee. There's not a case in Nashville.
All right, we've had a couple scares. All right, we do have a caller on the line. Hi there, Willie. What's your question?
Well, a couple of people have told me that it has been cases of this in Franklin, Kentucky, and Bowling Green, Kentucky, with Ebola. And I'm watching your show and stuff, and they say it can be contracted by people spitting on you, stuff like that, like saliva, could it be contracted by a man kissing a woman and saliva like that,
First, I'm not aware of any cases in Kentucky at all. A lot of places are having these kind of false alarms.
Scares,
Somebody gets sick, somebody's not really sure what Ebola is, somebody's not really sure how Ebola is spread, and they raise a concern, and then within hopefully a short period of time, somebody says, well, did you travel to Sierra Leone, Liberia, or Guinea in the 3 weeks before you got sick? And if the answer is no, then it's probably something else you have. It's probably not Ebola. So your question was, can you catch it? I think one thing is it's not widely around in the U.S. So, people in the U.S. who are kissing each other are not running a big risk of Ebola.
Well, I know what you're talking about there, but
if the person you're kissing is sick, like has a fever and a severe headache and muscle aches, and they just within the last 3 weeks got off a plane from West Africa, then that might be a possibility. But most of us are not really in that kind of a situation in terms of worrying about exposure to the Ebola virus.
And probably won't, as this progresses forward, need to be as much. We've seen people canceling their mission trips over there, and so it will become a little more limited on who's coming into the country.
Yeah, I mean, for those 3 countries, the CDC has encouraged people not to travel unless they really need to. Of course, you know, our men and women in uniform are going there to help out. We have other people from the Centers for Disease Control going there to help out to try and get the situation under control there. There may be other people who are participating in activities to try and get the thing under control in Africa. So, but yes, there are not as many people flying back and forth, and so you wouldn't expect to see a whole lot. But I think the other thing for people to remember is Africa is an enormous continent.
Ginormous, yes.
It's a huge continent. And what we're talking about is... what we're really talking about is 3 countries in the western part. Now, there's, you know, one thing that actually makes us encouraged that maybe we'll be able to get this under control and this won't be sort of a scare that's with us a long time, is that in Nigeria, there was a case from one of these countries that, you know, he was sick. He was on an airplane. He flew into Nigeria. They tracked all of his contacts, and he was there for 5 days before he died. They tracked all his contacts, thousands and thousands of visits and checking people's temperature and making sure that they accounted for everybody that might have been in contact with this person. They did have spread of Ebola in Nigeria. This was in Lagos, which has 21 million people in it. Could you imagine an epidemic in a city that size? They brought it under control.
Yeah, they did. I think we just did a story yesterday saying they'd cleared, I don't know what the actual terminology is, but they had cleared Nigeria because there hadn't been any cases there in a certain amount of time. And that, you know, it was fine. It was off the list.
So yeah, I think some people are so on edge that when they hear the word Africa, they think the whole thing. So, or they might cancel travel to South Africa, which is like very distant from where the risk is. And so those are things.
I heard it was in Tennessee. I heard it was in Kentucky. I said, man, that's, you know, that's something crazy. You know?
Oh, there's false alarms everywhere.
Yeah, no confirmed cases, and I think we've been hearing that on a national level in every state. People are coming down with the flu or whatever, and thinking immediately they have Ebola. But there have been no confirmed cases in Tennessee or Kentucky. We know about the cases that have been confirmed.
People get scared and take off to the doctor. They say, oh, yeah. You know, it could be Ebola. Well, you know, if I was to come down with a high fever or something like that, or sore throat, something like that, you know, I might go to the doctor and check it out, you know, just be on the safe side. But, you know, I was just wondering about that, you know, how I'd be contracting everything.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for your call tonight, Willie.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to take a quick break. We have some other people who've called in with their questions as well, so we'll get to you right as soon as we come back. So stay with us. Don't forget to call 737+.